to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said to the disciples, beware of practicing your piety before others in order to be seen by them, for then you have no reward from your Father in heaven. So whenever you give alms, do not sound the trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be praised by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward. But when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your alms may be done in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And whenever you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, so that they may be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward. But whenever you pray, go into your room and shut the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who is in secret will reward you. And whenever you fast, do not look dismal like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces so as to show others they are fasting. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that your fasting may be seen not by others, but by your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
So there was this little jingle I learned when I was a kid. Ringing around the rosy, pocket full of folksy, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. And that's the only other place that I've ever talked about ashes besides church. It's ring around the rosy, or ashes in church. And I learned that little jingle, tradition tells us, came from the mid-1600s when the Great Plague was in Europe, the bubonic plague and the rheumatic plague, I think they were. And there was so much death that people just embraced it, and kids just sang about it because it was just happening so much. And here, today, we have this odd ritual of scraping ashes on our foreheads. And it reminds us of our mortality. It reminds us that we are born, we live, and we will die. But we put it in the mark of a cross. And that cross is a reminder that after death is life. So we don't end with death, we end with life. Now Jesus says in the gospel, don't go out and do your wares, whatever your piety is, for everybody to see, because that's for the hypocrites. And here we are, front and center. I mean, you can't go anywhere without your forehead. Your forehead goes right before you. But I like to think of it more as a mirror image, so that when I look at you with the ashes on your forehead in the sign of a cross, I am reminded of the ashes of my forehead in the sign of a cross. Your ashes are reminding me of eternal life. They're not here, they're not on your head to flaunt and show everybody I'm the great I am. But they are there to remind others of the sign. Because after a while, we tend to forget that the cross is there. So when I see somebody in ShopRite or on the street or on the bus or wherever, and they've got a cross on their forehead, I am reminded reminded that my life doesn't end in death, but my life goes on in eternal life. I live in that hope. We live in that hope. So how do we get from death to life? I would like to suggest that one way is to follow the lectionary for Lent. The church has 3 years that cycle, each every 3 years. There's cycle A, cycle B, cycle C, and by the end of those 3 years, we will have read or listened to most of Scripture. Year A is where we are now, and there's a beautiful set of gospel stories during Lent for year A. And I would like to suggest that if we take each of those gospel stories and make them a part of our lives, we will indeed find our way to the resurrection, which is over there. So here we have ashes, right? Here's our start. And then the stones on this tan material, you'll see it later. Sorry, it's way down here. But it represents the desert, Jesus being tempted in the desert. If you find yourself in the desert, in a dry space where you don't feel like you're growing, you don't feel like life is good, and you're tempted by things that you don't want to be tempted by, pray to God. Because Jesus got through this praying to God. And we can too. If you are like Nicodemus, who continually asks Jesus, well, how can there be this life after death? What, are you born again? Like, how does that work? Well, there are times that we need to question our faith. And questioning our faith is a good thing. Christ wants us to learn. So question, as Nicodemus did. If you find yourself at the well in the middle of the day, thirsty, embarrassed, wondering of your, feeling alone in life, drink living water. That's what Jesus gave to the woman at the well. And she was never thirsty again. Neither will any of us be thirsty. And then there's Nicodemus. No, Bartimaeus, the man born blind. And Bartimaeus, Jesus took dirt and water and put them together and put it on his eyes. Dirt, well, it was the spit from Jesus' mouth, but still it was dirt and water. Dirt and water, when we mix them together, life grows. We can grow, we can see new things. And so, when we are blind or we can't see, think about how the earth grows new life, and how new life can even be grown within ourselves. And for Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, Mary and Martha's brother Lazarus was dying, and they sent word out to Jesus, and Jesus didn't come in time, and Lazarus died. And when Jesus got there, one of the sisters, I think it was Martha, she said, if you had come earlier, this would not have happened. There are times when we have to let God know of our anger, when it just doesn't feel good. And God can take it, just like Jesus could take it on the day that he was told, if you were here, this would not have happened. And indeed, Lazarus came back to life. Because Jesus was making the point that life doesn't stop with death, but indeed, there is the resurrection. And so, I invite you to journey with the church through these beautiful stories that bring us to the resurrection. Treasure them, because where your treasure is, there will be your heart.